Welcome to week 2 of the NFL football season. I am your host, Jeff Ratcliffe, for the War Room. We're going to get you ready, get you all set for everything you need to know to get your lineups all polished up for this week 2. And lots of stuff going on this morning, lots of questions. We're going to get to everything, and of course, inactives as we roll through here in this half hour. One of the busiest times of the entire week for fantasy football audiences. I'm your host, Jeff Ratcliffe, and Pat Thorman. Well, Pat Thorman is going to be joining me in a couple minutes here. Had a couple technical difficulties, but not a big deal, and he'll be right along with us soon. But did want to kind of roll through a few things as we're waiting on Pat. And I think one of the biggest questions that I've been getting asked so far this week has been dealing with Chris Ivory. The reports have just come across. Jason La Canfora said that Chris Ivory is going to be good to go for Monday night. That's a positive. But here's the thing. When we look at what we had last week was a very positive game script for the Jets. Home game against the Browns. Browns lost their starting quarterback, partially through the game, had to deal with Johnny Manziel. That's a really plus matchup, and that really it showed in what we got out of Chris Ivory. The big game, 2 touchdowns. But a lot of people are now kind of locking this guy in, thinking that they may have a borderline RB1 on their hands. I don't think that's what we have at all here, unfortunately. It was the product of a really plus game script, but when we look a little bit closer at what actually played out in this game, well, we had Chris Ivory and Bilal Powell essentially splitting snaps. It was 33 snaps for Ivory. Bilal Powell had 28 snaps. That sort of flew under the radar. A lot of people weren't talking about that, and that means that Powell is going to be still heavily involved in this offense. And there's my dog making an appearance on screen if you're watching. He's going to be heavily involved in this offense, especially in passing situations, and that's not good for Ivory. What else isn't good for Ivory is the game script this week. We're talking about an Indianapolis team that, yes, they performed below expectations last week, but can you blame them playing against the Buffalo Bills, one of the best defenses in the NFL? At home, they had to go on the road to Buffalo. That's a really tough draw for the first week of the season, and we saw the Bills game plan perfectly for Andrew Luck. I don't know if we're going to see the same thing. Now, not to knock this Jets defense. We have, very quality defense there, an impressive secondary, much upgraded from last year. And yet, I think the game script is going to go towards Indianapolis' favor. Tough game for the Jets to have to go on the road. And if that's the case, are we going to see a lot of Chris Ivory? I really doubt we're going to see the Chris Ivory we saw last week. Game script could get away from him here, and we could see more Bilal Powell in this game. Especially, looking for a sneaky differentiation play on DraftKings. Maybe Bilal Powell is that guy. I don't know. I mean, it's not obviously a play for the faint of heart, but it's a sneaky play where he could be involved in the passing game. He is the primary passing down back, so you're going to want to make sure you're aware of that if you're making a Chris Ivory and another player decision, which is what I'm seeing a lot so far today. Going down through, it looks like we're some of the other news. I'll just roll through some of this news that has come across today. We're hearing that, regardless of how Johnny Manziel plays, it's still Josh McCown's job. That's not a huge shock. Dwayne Bowe is going to be active today for the Browns, which I guess that doesn't really move the needle very much at all for anybody. He is a guy who was pretty much off the fantasy radar, and probably for good reason. So you're not going to want to rely on him at all. What we had feared about Delanie Walker, it looks like it is coming to fruition. He's not going to play in week 2 against the Browns. So that's not a good thing. This is a guy who we saw him trending in the right direction after last week and seemed to have good chemistry with Marcus Mariota. That's not going to happen this week. So keep a close eye on that if you're a Delanie Walker owner and you're going to want to fire somebody else up. Under the radar TE2 that a lot of people aren't talking about this week and could play could have a significant role in the offense would be Crockett Gilmore. He's a top 20 play this week. Now, not a top 10 play, but a top 20 play. And he's going to be, like I said, he's going to be really involved in this offense. They don't really have receiving threats. I mean, they have Steve Smith, sure. Who else do they have, right? Justin Forsett obviously is going to be involved in this game plan, but it's a game script that should bode positively for Forsett. But Crockett Gilmore could be involved significantly in this offense, and really a sneaky play if you're hard up at tight end, and also a really sneaky DFS play. He's super cheap across the sites. So I'm waiting on Pat still, and we're looking at see if any injury reports have come through. It looks like we are getting some information starting to trickle in. So I'm just going to go through, just like we did last week, go through some of these games, anything that sticks out, and we'll see what we can do from there. We'll start with Houston and Carolina. With Houston, Nate Washington was a little banged up, but he's fully participating in practice, and he is going to give it a go. Listed as probable, so he's going to be in this game. And Washington is a guy who people aren't necessarily talking about as well. And we know what Nate Washington is. We've seen him around the league, and he's sort of has that deep threat ability. Same thing he's always had, even going back to his Steelers days. But the fact of the matter that he is ahead of Cecil Shorts on this pecking order, this wide receiver pecking order, that's what people aren't talking about. Now, obviously, we know Nuke Hopkins is there, but Nate Washington is going to continue to be involved in this offense, and that shouldn't be sold short. It may take a little bit of time for Jalen Strong, the rookie, to get up and running here. And so Washington having a role, if you're in deep leagues, I know some people are in 16-team leagues where the pickings are thin. I have seen Washington floating around. Now, people scooped him up probably after his performance last week, but I don't think last week was much of a fluke, and I do continue to expect to see him really involved in this offense. So Washington, good to go today. Rolling down through the Panthers, Luke Kuechly listed as doubtful. He is not playing. He did not get through the concussion protocol. Anytime a player is concussed like that, you can almost expect them to miss at least 1 week. And then going forward, now they have to get through the concussion protocol test in order to get on the field. That means he has not done so yet. And that's, again, it's not a huge surprise, which means we're going to see A.J. Klein out there playing every down alongside Thomas Davis. This isn't the best of matchups, but again, it's not the worst of matchups as well. So Klein, a guy, sneaky sort of LB4 up with upside, but really it's Thomas. It's going to be the Thomas Davis show. Thomas Davis now anchored in there as an LB1 play for this week. So you absolutely want to get him in your lineups. Looks like Star Lotulelei is potentially going to miss another one. It sounds like he might be back. He's questionable, but that does bode positively if you're looking at this run game for Houston. I don't know if I want to trust much of this Houston run game at all. But that being said, if you have somebody there, if you have Alfred Blue, that is, I guess there are worse matchups that you could possibly have. Either way, still looking through, there's actually no inactives here, just reading the injury report for this particular game. Looks like we do have our inactives and actives for Pittsburgh. So let's go to Pittsburgh, San Francisco. And right now what I'm seeing, pretty much what you would expect. No big inactives. Cortez Allen, I guess, maybe not that you're starting him or anything like that, but that does bode positively. Well, maybe it's better he's on the field for San Francisco. But either way, looks like, Mike Mitchell is going to go. Will Allen is going to go. So they're both playing. That's good for the Steelers. They're not the best, but at least they're better than the other options on that team. Will Allen, sneaky IDP guy, by the way. He's going to be playing in the box. He's going to have a lot of tackle opportunities. So you're going to want to maybe give him a nice long look. Moving to Tampa, Mike Evans is going to be active in this game. Now, with Mike Evans being active, we really have to be clear here. If this guy is active, he's going to play. He's going to play a significant role. It's not like he's going to be out there as a decoy. I love when people say that. He's not going to be out there as a decoy, and this is a really strong matchup. This is a matchup against the Saints secondary that isn't good. Unfortunately, they are just not good this year. And they have some quality players on that defense, but the defense is going to struggle. This is a game that could have a lot of points scored. It's a game where the Saints are favored significantly by Vegas. That means you want a piece of the passing offense of the opposite team. Jameis Winston could have a better game than what we saw last week out of him. Mike Evans there really helps him. So you do like Mike Evans. You're firing him up. He's a wide receiver one play. You're not questioning this whatsoever. Moving to the Saints side of the ball, C.J. Spiller is active. This could be interesting. Now, we saw last week the Saints really wanted to get their running backs involved in the passing game. That's a good thing. That's a very good thing. And Mark Ingram looked like a decent enough receiver, which is something we really didn't see out of him before. So a little bit more well-rounded as a player. You like that if you're a Mark Ingram owner. But what do you do this week? All right, so what we saw last week out of Mark Ingram, it was essentially about a 2-to-1 split in snaps between Ingram and Kyrie Robinson. It would not shock me at all if that's the same exact distribution we see this week, but with C.J. Spiller in place of Kyrie Robinson. Kyrie Robinson going to really see minimal usage, a handful of snaps at the most this week. That would not shock me if that's the scenario that we see play out. If New Orleans gets up in this game, as we expect them to do, they're going to do a lot of running, in the second half, and that bodes positively. That's the right game script you want for Mark Ingram. Spiller, at this point, PPR, okay. Fire him up in a flex spot, or if you're starting 3 RBs, which is awesome if you are, but fire him up as that RB3 type. I don't know if I want to trust him in standard leagues just yet. It's one of those sort of let's wait and see how he's used. I know there's a lot of anticipation here. It's really exciting with him in this offense. But for right now, patience, right? That's probably your best bet. Hopefully you have another option other than Spiller. PPR, maybe you want to roll him out there, though, like I said, just because he will be involved. If he's on this field, he's going to be involved in the passing offense. And we saw what Darren Sproles did in his time with this New Orleans offense. So hopefully, we'll see a little bit of that out of C.J. Spiller. And what's interesting is Spiller and Sproles are slightly different types of players, but Spiller equally as dynamic if, getting the ball in open space. Sproles is just a unique guy. That was so fun watching him play. And for an Eagles fan last week, it's a tough loss, tough pill to swallow, but you like what you saw out of Darren Sproles last week. Anyway, but phone's buzzing, getting all sorts of messages. So we're coming down, 15 minutes left in the show. No Pat. I don't know where Pat is, so whatever. I'll roll solo here. And you're getting some questions in here on Twitter. So remember, you want your questions answered. I will do my best to get to them. It is #WarRoom, and I'll get these questions on here. Seeing a lot about Deone Bucannon right now, and this is an interesting one. This is one that's sort of, and every week we get players like this who button hook us a little bit. We come out of left field, and, here's what we do know. Deone Bucannon is questionable with a groin injury. He got limited practice in on Thursday and Friday. That's good. You don't like to see the practice reports trend the other way. You don't like to see them say, okay, he was limited on Wednesday and Thursday, and then he was not practicing on Friday. That means they're not playing, right? So at least you have that. The question right now, is he going to play? Hey, this one is really up in the air. Anytime you have a questionable, you're talking close to 50-50 in this case. I think he plays. I do, based on what I'm seeing from the practice reports. And if he plays, you do want him in there. This guy is still tackling at an extremely high rate. He's playing essentially linebacker, and so the fact that you have a linebacker in your safety designation is awesome. So if he plays, you want him in there. If not, there are plenty of other options this week. On Twitter, at 22Steve says his only other option is Kendrick Lewis. I hope that's not your only other option. There are plenty of other options out there on the waiver wire every single week with defensive backs. So if Deone Bucannon doesn't go, that will, you can certainly work the waiver wire. Use the projections at Pro Football Focus. Remember, if you're not subscribing, well, you should be, right? Help us out. If you love what we do, that's how you can help out what we do. It's just $29.99. We'll get you the whole season. You'll get the rankings, the projections, the cornerback matchup tool, the DFS tool, which is awesome, by the way. I could sit there and play with that DFS tool for hours. It's such a good tool this year. All of that, the content, and of course, you get articles from one Pat Thorman. Pat, you made it.
It was quite the morning. Realized in New Hampshire that the internet wasn't working and needed to scramble back down to Boston. So it's been hectic, but in time to catch up on inactives and get everything set and ranked. And yeah, how we doing?
Pretty good so far. If anybody is still watching after me just rambling at all time. No, we're going through. We got a couple games in now. Just talked a little Mike Evans and CJ Spiller, so covered those guys. But just rolling through these inactives like we did last week. And, again, folks, if you're watching on YouTube and you want your questions asked, hashtag War Room. So, Pat, we're going to move to the Lions and the Vikings. We do have active, inactive information here. Looks like Golden Tate is a go. Matthew Stafford is a go. Not a big surprises there. We expected them to play. Haloti Ngata on the defensive side is playing. So that, of course, keep that in mind, Adrian Peterson owners. But and Brandon Pettigrew is inactive, so voting a little bit more positively there for Eric Ebron. DeAndre Levy is inactive. I don't know what is going on with that whole scenario. I don't think anybody does except Levy himself. So we'll just leave that one for now, but make sure you do get him out of your lineups. But Pat, I wanted to talk about Matthew Stafford and Golden Tate and Calvin Johnson, this passing game that really looked lackluster last week. I mean, how are you thinking about these guys both this week and going forward?
You certainly want to, see them get it together this week. You want to see them run some more plays, and they only ran 47 plays last week. So that had a lot to do with why Calvin was so quiet. This week he's going to get, Xavier Rhodes. So that's going to be an interesting matchup and see how he does there. So I think Tate is a little more in play this week. I'm really, excited for Abdullah. They were kind of coy this week about if he was truly taking over for Jock Bell, who at this point it seems to be kind of a glorified goal line bat. So I think Abdullah is a great play. He's still like 4,500 on DraftKings. He's still pretty cheap on the daily sites. I think that this might be one of the last opportunities you get to use him as a value. Yeah,
he's a great cash game play this week. I think he's going to have a lot of ownership this week, but I do like Abdullah a lot there. And you're right, Jock Bell. For anybody who drafted him, I was banging the table on not drafting this guy. It just doesn't look like it's there, and I don't think it's going to come back. That was 3 surgeries in the last 2 off seasons. That's never a good thing. Pat, switching to the other side of the ball, there's really nothing to report here. I mean, anybody who's interested, Jerick McKinnon's active. Okay, whoopity-doo. So let's move on to the Cardinals and Bears, because there is a lot of interesting stuff going on. Yeah. Andre Ellington's out. We know that, okay? So that means Chris Johnson. All right, we'll talk about him. But real quick, just get through the rest of these guys. Michael Floyd is active. Both your safeties are active here. So Deon Buchanan and Tony Jefferson. So they have 4 safeties playing. But people asking about Buchanan, I just talked about him. He's active. You're firing him up. This guy is basically playing linebacker, so you love that. But let's talk about Chris Johnson. Let's talk about David Johnson. So Johnson & Johnson. Chris Johnson's a guy who projects out really well. We heard Bruce Arians say, hey, I don't really trust the rookies that much, and especially, early on in the season. So it sounds like Chris Johnson's going to have a good opportunity in a game that looks like a favorable script, looks like the Cardinals, hey, they're a road favorite, so that should tell you something. What are you doing with Chris Johnson this week? Any love for David Johnson?
I think David Johnson is more of a feather in Carson Palmer's cap for this game anyway, and similar to Michael Floyd. I mean, the guys that you hesitate to start. But I think it does help Carson Palmer's overall weapons in the passing game. Chris Johnson, I mean, the Bears hung surprisingly well with Eddie Lacy last week. I mean, they didn't get completely run over. So I think it does set up more as a passing game for the Cardinals. So I think Chris Johnson, he's like you said, he's going to get some workload. If you're on the desperate side, you feel comfortable starting him. More of a flex type than an RB2 type. But I'm all over Palmer. I'm liking John Brown, especially in GPPs. I'm liking Fitzgerald in cash games. But I think they're going to attack through the air.
Absolutely, I agree with you 100%. But Chris Johnson's a nice saver. He should hit value at least, which is good because he's cheap most sites. Hey, I have him as a borderline RB2 in season-long leagues. I think that's completely fair. Switching to the Bears, Alshon Jeffrey is out. We know that. That means, a lot of people are talking about Eddie Royal. Eddie Royal is going to be covered by Tyrann Mathieu, okay? So that is not good. I don't think this is an Eddie Royal day. I think this is just more Matt Forte. We heard, Matt Forte is not going to get as many. No, he is. He's definitely going to get just as many this week. And, hey, you're spending up for Forte in certain places, but, cash game potentially if you want to make sure you have a nice high floor at running back in daily this week, Forte, and you're obviously starting him in season long. Pat, we have 8 minutes, so I want to kind of fly through some of these. We'll move to the Patriots and the Bills. Nothing really of note here, but Pat, one quick question that I'm getting a lot of is Dion Lewis, LeGarrette Blount. What are your thoughts on these two guys today?
Well, I think it shapes up as a Lewis game. I know they'll certainly use Blount just to keep him honest, basically. But I can't see them moving those defensive tackles, especially with 3 rookies starting, at guards and center. So I think it sets up as a Lewis game. Quick passes. They're not going to want Brady to hang back there for very long because we'll get decapitated with that defense. So, it sets up, Lewis, Edelman, obviously Gronkowski, even if Rex triple teams him like he's threatening to. But I think it's going to be a typical get the ball out quick Patriots attack.
Absolutely, and if they triple team him, Julian Edelman is going to go nutso today. And hey, we look at what they did last week to Andrew Luck. They forced the issue. They made Andrew Luck throw the ball fast, and Andrew Luck's not very good at that yet. I mean, that's going to come with time. Tom Brady is maybe the best in the NFL at that, so they're not going to be able to do the same thing to Brady. And we've seen the Patriots go into Buffalo and kick the you-know-what out of the Bills so many different times here. I think this is a great game for that passing offense, and I do like Dion Lewis this week as well. Switching to the other side, really nothing to report here. I think Sammy Watkins has a rebound game, so I wouldn't shy away from playing him. He's going to probably see Malcolm Butler. And Butler, to be fair, Butler was in the right place a lot of times last week. He just went against a video game receiver. Antonio Brown is so good right now, so don't read too much into that. Switching to the Chargers-Bengals, not much to report, Chargers side of the ball or Bengals side in terms of active, inactive. So you're not really worried too much there. But I guess quick 1 or 2 thoughts here. I guess Stevie Johnson is probably the player I'm hearing the most questions about. And a lot of people are high on Stevie Johnson after you saw those targets last week. We know this is a defense that you can attack the middle of the field. So I'm expecting to see a lot of Stevie Johnson in there, but even more Keenan Allen in there as well. And, of course, a little bit of tight end action. So, Pat, what are you doing with Stevie Johnson this week?
I'm off him more than last week. Just because in general they do have better cornerbacks there. But I think the Darius Greenpoint is an excellent one. I think he's a really good play this week.
Yeah, I agree. I like him, especially a DFS play. He's a little bit cheaper on some of the sites. Tyler Eifert is not anymore, and AJ Green said that he reminds him of Rob Gronkowski, and that is obviously a teammate saying it, so you take it for what it is. But I saw a little bit of that too, and one of the questions we were asked on Twitter this week: well, does he block? Yeah. I mean, hey, he's not an elite level blocker, but he's not coming off the field, so expect to see more Eifert. Titans, Browns, not much to report here as well. Jason McCourty is still inactive. We knew that was going to happen, at least on the Titans side. For the Browns, Dwayne Bowe, I talked about him earlier. You're not worried about him. Carlos Dansby is the player, though, that a lot of people were asking about. He is active. Kevin Jones, Browns beat writer, said that Carlos Dansby, and Pat, this is probably one of my favorite quotes about any NFL player ever. Carlos Dansby loves football so much he would play for free. That is awesome. That is absolutely cool. They have newfound respect for Carlos Dansby after hearing that, and he's going to be out there today, so you're firing him up in IDP lineups. But let's look at this game as well. Okay, Marcus Mariota. All right, we have him. Maybe thoughts and expectations for him this week, and then maybe on the Brown side of the ball, thoughts and expectations for the opposing quarterback, Johnny Manziel.
I think Mariota takes a little bit of a step back from last week. I mean, obviously he's not going to be throwing a touchdown every 4 passes like he was last week. The secondary is certainly the strength of the Browns defense. So you'd expect a little more on the ground. Maybe they give a little Terrence West, in addition to Sankey. On the Browns side, Manziel is going to make some crazy plays and he's going to turn the ball over. So I think maybe Tennessee's kind of a sneaky defense start as well. And I think Corral's got a good chance of having a decent day. I mean, Martin got taken out of the game script last week pretty quick against Tampa. So, but he was running fairly well, and I think Corral and maybe even Duke Johnson have a chance of at least paying off their price.
Yeah, and if you're going to attack this defense, if you can get behind the to the second level, the linebackers are a little suspect for the Titans defense. So it's a solid start there. We have 3 minutes left, 2 games to go though, so we're almost there. Julio Jones active, no surprise there on the defensive side of the ball for the Giants. The Giants-Falcons game on the defensive side of the ball. John Beeson isn't active. That means Ioane Unga is going to be out there again. So fire him up. I don't know. It's the craziest thing. He was the number 1 linebacker last week in fantasy leagues, so get him in your rosters. But Pat, any concerns with Julio Jones facing Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie?
Well, it's a tougher matchup than he had last week. I don't think he's going to beast just as quite as well as he did last week. I think they're going to try to attack the middle a little bit more, whether it's Coleman or whether it's Freeman. I know everyone wants Coleman to be the guy, and I'm on board with that too. Freeman was the guy that was out there getting more, 4 times as many pass targets as Coleman was. So they're going to attack in the middle. I think maybe Roddy White plays in the slot a little bit, gets some work in the middle as well. I expect it to be a little more well balanced the passing game than it was on Monday night.
Yeah, and the game script on Monday night just sort of caused that, and it was. I mean, that could have been a 200-yard game for Julio Jones. I hope that these ticky-tacky, blocking before the reception penalties don't continue to happen throughout the season, because that slowed the game down. And I mean, a lot of it was really bang stuff. So hopefully that changes. But we're not in this to critique the refs. Whatever. Let's finally wrap up with the game of the week. St. Louis, Washington. Nobody really cares too much about this, but there are a lot of fantasy relevant players. So I guess the 2 players that I kind of want to shine a light on really quickly here, Trey Mason for the Rams. Thoughts and expectations there against a relatively tough Washington run defense. And then on the other side, Jordan Reed is going to be active. So thoughts and expectations for Jordan Reed with Deshaun Jackson out, and maybe I guess throw a little Pierre Garçon love in there.
Yeah, Garçon's the guy that kind of stands out to me. I mean, last year in the same exact matchup, the Rams are out the Redskins. Deshaun Jackson missed it. Garçon went 9 for 95. The seasons before, he was getting peppered before Deshaun Jackson got there. He led the league in targets. So I'm a little bit off of Jordan Reed this week versus last week. The Rams defend tight ends pretty well. He was a little banged up in practice. You don't know exactly how bad that is. On the flip side, Trey Mason, like you said, Washington's got a sneaky, good front seven. So I think they're going to attack through the air a little more than you typically expect the Rams. I mean, Foles chucks it deep, whether it's accurate or not. He's opening that offense up, and the Redskins do have trouble on the back end. So I think and I did see Quick as a healthy scratch again, which is really curious. But I maybe fire up Kenny Britt, maybe Tavon Austin. You can double dip if the Rams defense scores.
Yeah. Don't get your hopes too high for Tavon, though. Unfortunately, as much as we'd love to see it. But anyway, it is 12 o'clock. That means that it's time for me and Pat to go into our laboratories for the next hour and not talk to anybody. So enjoy week 2. Best of luck to everybody. Next week we'll be back here probably together at 11:30. Hopefully together. And, keep tuning in. Sign up for PF Fantasy Gold and PFF Fantasy Gold, and that's it for the show. So for Pro Football Focus, he's Pat, I'm Jeff, and that's a wrap.